Okay, let's take a look here at the ABC form. Now this is what you get anytime you've done any flushing, IVF, transferring, freezing, all of the above. You will get a form like this from us or from any embryo transfer company that you work from, or even if you just purchase embryos and have never done embryo work yourself. So let's start with part A here. As you can see, part A is the Certificate of Embryo Recovery. This would be a conventional flush, not IVF, a conventional flush. So we have conventionally flushed this cow, and this A part of the ABC is the results. So here you've got your Angus donor, best donor 1, 2, 3. This is obviously a sample number. Here's your registration number, and you got your ear tag or tattoo, all this information that you have. And then you also have your sire here as Studley sire 456. Then you have the ID code and the number. And then if you used another bull, you have a space for that as well. So up here, you'll see Onset Estrus. That's the day she was in heat. So you'll see this, and typically 7 days, you'll have the same breeding date, and 7 days later, you will do the flush. So from April 24th to May 1st in this example is the 7 days from estrus and breeding until the flush. So we recovered 10 total embryos, as you can see. One was not fertilized. One was degenerate, meaning it died along the process. 4 were transferred and 4 were frozen. So we know we're going to have a complete ABC form because we fresh transferred and we froze. So here's a collection code, which not all of the embryo transfer companies will provide. Here's a response, which is, again, this is all kind of optional stuff that you really don't need to know. The ET code, you could look this up and see that Bovagen Embryo Transfer is 640 as our American Embryo Transfer Association code. So part B is a certificate of embryo transfer. So in this case, it's the fresh transfer. But if you froze these, you would still get this A information, and then you will have this, but the date would obviously be different. So we collected these on May 1st of 2020 in this example, and we also transferred these 4. So here's your 4, here's your recip number, and then you've got your stage 5. They were all grade 1. This was non-surgical. If it was a frozen transfer, you would have a freeze date here on the straw. This would show up in a practitioner ID if available, and same with cane numbers and straw numbers. So pretty self-explanatory. Here is your freezing. Now, if you purchased embryos, this is what you want to pay attention to. You have the cane number, which is going to help you identify in your tank which ones these are. Here's your straw number. Here is your stage and grade. You got 3 5-1s and 1 grade 2. This is all pretty standard. If it's not exported, there wouldn't be a trypsin treatment. Zone intact, this is all pretty standard. So numbers of embryo per straw should always be 1. Wash 10 times, this is all standard, and it tells you how we froze it here. So you just want to make sure, if you paid for grade 1 embryos, if you bought them, you want to make sure you got grade 1 embryos. See, here you have a grade 2. Doesn't mean they're not transferable, but if you paid for grade 1 quality, you should get, obviously, all grade 1 quality. So this is simple things, but it's something you need to look for, and then you're going to need this information for these recipients here, these calves. You're going to need this information right here for registering with your association if you need to do that. So you're going to need the date of transfer and then also the recovery date if they're different. So this will be required for registering your calves. So let's take a look at the IVF side. Here you see this will be just a freeze. There is no transfer, so it's just an A and C. So you can see everything right here is the same. We have the certificate of oocyte recovery, IVF. A lot of times it might just say recovery, so it gets a little tricky on how do you know if it's conventional or if it's IVF. So let's take a look here. The donor sire is the same. And then here you see a date. This is the day we would have collected the oocytes. And then here is the day that the IVF lab, May 2nd, that's the day they would have fertilized those oocytes, so the next morning. And then they would have been frozen on May 9th. So 7 days after they are fertilized, they are frozen. So that's how you know right there. You see date out of culture. that's the culture media. They refer to these as test tube babies. So they're in a dish being fertilized. So this is 7 days later on May 9th that they are being frozen, and you can see we got 8 frozen here. Freezing here is very similar. It's exactly the same as your other recovery report, but here, just again, the IVF date, that is when the lab fertilized those eggs that we sent them, the oocytes. And then the date out of culture, when you see that, that's the day that they froze them. So 2020, May 9, that's the day that you would have as a freeze date for these embryo calves when you're registering them.